The FDA has cleared a new hybrid closed-loop system called CamAPS FX, and it could be arriving in the US and elsewhere soon. The system runs on a phone and connects to a CGM and a pump to provide automated insulin delivery. It has a customizable target range as low as 80 milligrams per deciliter, significantly lower than most cleared systems. It's approved for use during pregnancy and aims to be interoperable and used with whichever pump or CGM you want. Welcome to the show. I'm Justin, and on here I talk all things diabetes tech, news, and management with educators, tech leaders, and those thriving with diabetes. Joining me today is Candice Ward. She is the training and outreach manager at CamDiab and works with the CamAPS FX. She has a diabetes clinician background and has spent many years supporting people with type 1. Candice and I get into how the algorithm works, the system's unique features, and the incredible story of Roman Hovorka, whose passion led him to research and build CamAPS over the last 20 years. The system is already being used in 17 countries, mostly throughout Europe and Australia, and plans for Canada and the US are in the works. Are you using CamAPS FX? Let us know on YouTube how it's going and how the system compares to the others you have used. Keep in mind that anything you hear on this podcast or content on my social media and YouTube channel is not medical advice. It is for educational purposes only. Always consult with a physician before making changes to your healthcare. Candice, thank you so much for coming on the show. Before we hop into kind of the story behind this app and algorithm, because it's so fascinating, I'm excited to hear it. Kind of explain to our audience, what is CamAPS FX?
Great. So thank you very much for having me on the show. So CamAPS FX is a mouthful. So it's the Cambridge Artificial Pancreas System, which is designed as a hybrid closed loop system. So meaning that it's got an algorithm that is trying to decide how much insulin to deliver based on sensor readings it's getting every 1 to 5 minutes and driving insulin via an insulin pump and adjusting that rate every 8 to 12 minutes. The user still needs to count their carbohydrate and decide how much insulin to give for that as a pre-meal bolus. So that's where the hybrid closed loop comes in. Fully closed loop is it would be doing everything, including covering meals all on its own. So CamAPS FX is a hybrid closed loop system which has a very advanced algorithm to try adapt and learn with your different needs. It's available via sort of 17 countries at the moment for people living with type 1 diabetes from the age of 1 in Europe all the way through, I think our oldest person on the research environment is about 88 years old. There are some older sort of real world users, but we've got a huge variety of people using the system right from diagnosis of very young children all the way through. And importantly, we're the only system that has clinical evidence and CE marking and more recently FDA approval, which is fantastic for pregnancy. And pregnancy is a very special time but unfortunately high risk time that things can go wrong for mum and the developing baby. And so tight glucose control prior to pregnancy and during pregnancy is really important to prevent those negative things from happening. And so we are the system that has the widest personal glucose target, and especially on the lower end for pregnancy, but also on the higher end to start people who may be feeling that they're a little bit nervous about starting an insulin pump or closed loop because they're worried about hypos, or they're feeling very anxious and they'd like to start a little bit higher and pull themselves down.
So how long has this been around, available to users, and who is using it?
Great question. So the system was commercialized in March 2020. So it's the fairly new kid on the block around hybrid closed loop. But actually, the research started almost 20 years ago. So it is something that Roman Havorka has created. He's a professor of mathematics that resides at the University of Cambridge in England. And he and his team have been researching this algorithm since the early 2000s. So it has a wealth of information and evidence behind it, allowing us to know how to use it in different population groups before it even came to the market.
What has been your involvement with it?
Absolutely. So I had the privilege of leading the insulin pump and type 1 service at Addenbrooke's Hospital, which is a big hospital associated to the University of Cambridge. And so when he started his research in the early 2000s, we obviously did some bench testing, but then we needed people to actually use the system. So the patients I was dealing with were volunteering for research, and so with them, we included them in the research and learned those lessons. So as an educator, I've been working with the system in the research environment and now in the sort of routine clinical care that we deliver in the UK with CamAPS FX.
And how long has that been, though?
So from a research point of view, since the early 2000s, but since 2020. So we commercialized first in the UK in early 2020, and now we are available in 17 countries throughout the world, including a lot in Europe, in Australia, and in October we're launching in New Zealand. We're just waiting for our regulatory approval for Canada, and we just, very exciting, we got our FDA approval. So we are coming to the US as well.
Yeah, this is fantastic. I'm so happy to see it expanding so much in such a short amount of time. So I find that there are similarities to the story of this algorithm to the open source community. You know, the open source community has built algorithms out of passion and seeing a need for it. And they also don't represent a company. You know, a lot of the AID systems now come from companies that want to make money, but of course want to help people. And what was so interesting about this story was it was, at least in the beginning, one man's passion, it's probably so many people's passion now, to build this and to spearhead this. And that's Roman Havorka. You've mentioned him a few times already, and I really want to stick with that for a second. Can you explain to us, who is Roman Havorka? And how did all of this begin? Where did his journey begin?
Absolutely. So in the early 1990s, he was started working for a company called Disatronic, which some of you may sort of recognize the name as an early insulin pump company, and trying to research, can we use insulin and technology to deliver insulin via an algorithm, so the early closed loop, seeing that there was this issue around managing glucose and how tricky it was for people with type 1 diabetes. But also we noticed in the inpatient setting, people who without diabetes who got very sick also needed support and often insulin, as well as people with type 2. And he identified this as a problem that he wanted to solve from a mathematical point of view, and started his sort of journey developing hybrid closed loop therapy. The research that they did with Disatronic unfortunately never came to fruition. They were very much focused on doing something in an inpatient setting, and it was sort of the equipment was about the size of a stove or a refrigerator. It was enormous, and so slowly he developed more and more interest in this and came to the University of Cambridge to further that when the Disatronic trials sort of came to an end. And his approach to things is around, people were saying it couldn't be done. The technology was imperfect. It just couldn't be done in a safe way. And he thought he had a way of trying to develop this technology to improve people's lives. And really unusually, he also focused on children. He felt that children living with type 1 diabetes really needed the technology the most because they would be living with type 1 diabetes the longest. And so if we could improve care for people at diagnosis, we could potentially prevent complications coming on. We could just improve their whole lives. So his first research always included children, which is very unusual. And so we've got a wealth of data. And so we have actually the youngest CE marking of all the hybrid closed loop systems because we have proven it safe in that area. Obviously, as other systems develop, more research comes, that will be expanded. But we were the first system to be available in Europe from 1 year and up. And in the FDA will be 2 years and up, but we have a lot of people now. It's routine care, for example, at Addenbrooke's Hospital and a number of other hospitals in the UK to start newly diagnosed children straight on hybrid closed loop, giving them the best possible treatment right from the beginning.
So this all happened. He was at Disatronic when was that? What years?
In the 90s.
What period? In the 90s.
Yeah.
What comes after that? He leaves that company and then he starts
Correct.
This research. What year is this?
So he, I think, started his research in 2003.
Okay. And then I know, so I did a little digging up myself, and Hovorka went to the JDRF in 2007 and asked for funding, right? I know the initial response from JDRF was, we're only looking for a cure. We don't do technology. But there was pushing coming from him and whoever else, and they eventually established the Artificial Pancreas Consortium.
Correct.
What was this?
So Roman obviously has been funding all this research through the University of Cambridge, through other grants like from the JDRF, to learn as much about the system as possible. And so you're absolutely right. The JDRF said, no, we're about a cure, which is fabulous, but we don't have one yet. We need to support people who actually have the condition right now. And so the JDRF, interestingly, went to their members and said, should we fund this? And the overwhelming response was, yes, we need to support people develop technology and treatments, as well as look for a cure. Don't get us wrong, we want a cure, but it's about making life better now. And so the consortium was created out of this to sort of guide, okay, what research needs to be done, what should be funded, how should be funded, and bring other people alongside, because Roman's sort of idea is we need to work together. Everyone has their skills. He has a skill around mathematics and algorithms. He's not there to develop a sensor or a pump. We need to work together because there's very good sensors out there. There are very good insulin pumps up there and other technology available. And that's why CamAPS FX is designed as an algorithm on an app that can be loaded onto your personal smartphone and interoperable with other devices. It's not like one company does it all. It's about this collaborative and this consortium. Let's push it forward to get the best treatment that we possibly can.
That's fantastic. Before we leave this area, Roman Hovorka won an award at EASD last year. It was the Novo Nordisk Diabetes Prize for Excellence.
Whoa.
What is so special or important about his story? What stands out to you?
To me, he is an amazing man. He has been single-mindedly driven for over 30 years to solve a problem that people said in the 90s could not be done. And his approach is, well, if if you think it can't be done and nobody thinks it can be done, well, I'm going to find a plan. So he taught himself to code and, to work alongside the app developers to develop, the infrastructure. He's a mathematician, but he taught, he involved the right people and taught himself to, address all these regulatory issues, CE marking, FDA, he had to create a company to commercialize CamAPS, because otherwise it would have stuck in the research environment and never become routine type 1 care. And so very few, if you look at just the general startup world, very few startups come to fruition and make such a difference. And so I think that is the story. It has been driven by heart and by single-mindedness about we need to make living life with type 1 diabetes easier. It's not going to be easy, but we will do our best to walk alongside, involve people with the condition every step of the way to really design something that makes a difference.
Today's episode is sponsored by T1D Exchange. You can directly make an impact on diabetes healthcare, treatments, and technology by participating in the T1D Exchange registry. It starts with a simple survey about your life with T1D, and it only takes about 15 minutes. After that, you'll have a personal portal with ongoing T1D study and survey opportunities. Plus, some of these studies even offer compensation. Signing up with the link in the show notes helps support my channel, and it allows me to continue putting out free content. You can sign up at t1dexchange.org/diabetic or click that link in today's show notes. Before we hop into the algorithm, I know a lot of people listening are excited to hear about that. This app was designed to be cross-compatible with different CGMs and different pumps. This is an algorithm that lives on a device or like a phone and can utilize different devices. Why was that important in the creation of this algorithm?
Because everyone's different. We all have our own unique preferences. Some people, like a certain pump. Some people will like a certain sensor. It'll get on with their body, their self-image, their skin in a different way. And so we really wanted to be able to have an algorithm that could meet the individual's needs, but also type 1 diabetes and technology is moving so rapidly as new sensors come out. We didn't want people to in the UK, you buy a pump for 4 years and you stick with that pump for 4 years, but there might be 3 or 4 different sensors that come out in that time or something that changes. The pump here in a closed loop system is just the delivery device, but you can get, if the app is on your phone, you can get those app updates. There are going to be new changes. So in a way, it's future-proofing as well as sitting with your uniqueness. I like this sensor with this pump combination. So we're really just trying to fit all needs as far as we possibly can in this situation.
Great. All right, let's talk about the system itself. And let's first start with, there's so many AIDs available now, which is fantastic. People have options.
Exactly.
What makes the CamAPS algorithm unique? What features does it have that may stand out ahead of some of the other options out there?
No, absolutely. So if we look at it, we've had to make it in a way that suits all walks of life. So we've got a sort of a 1-year-old child compared to a 25-year-old woman who's pregnant compared to an 80-year-old who's on the system. They will have different needs. So one, it takes a total daily dose from 5 to 350 units a day. So it really has a wide span. It also takes a wide body weight from very little to very high. So it doesn't exclude people because they either need too much insulin or too little insulin along the way. And so the algorithm has been adapted just to make sure that it is that inclusiveness. But in the features itself, We've obviously got the routine, bolus calculators, ways to judge your insulin, but there are two unique features that we've got called Boost and Ease Off. Boost does what it says on the tin. It kind of uses the algorithm's learning, but you just give the algorithm a heads up. I need a bit of a boost because I'm sick, or maybe I've got hormones going on. I'm a woman with my PMT, or maybe something's going on. I've had a stressy day that I need more insulin than I normally need. And this just tells the algorithm, look, be just a little bit more aggressive. Use your learning, your understanding of who I am, but just be a bit more aggressive. But the good thing about this, and you might be thinking, oh, that sounds like an increased temporary basal rate on a pump. Well, yes, but it's sophisticated in the fact that it's going to still aim for target. So if it's calculated that there's enough insulin on board to meet your target, it's going to stop boosting. But if your glucose levels start rising again, it'll start again. So it'll on and off control itself, but just be turned on to be more aggressive. Ease off is the opposite. It's sort of for sport, or maybe you're doing a bit more activity, or something's going on that you need slightly less insulin in a one-off event. It's not your normal routine. And then the algorithm will just be a slightly gentler. Both these you can actually plan ahead of time. So ease off is great if I'm going to, packing my bag to go off to work in the morning, and I know I've got my gym class at 5 o'clock. I don't have to keep looking at my watch to set my reduced temporary basal rate earlier. I can just pre-program it up to 24 hours ahead to kick in when I want it to kick in and stop, which is quite useful. And that's not about the algorithm, that's just about living life, making it easier. The same for Boost. You can plan it in ahead. Normally you don't know when things are going to go wrong in ahead, but this is quite useful for people with maybe stomach emptying issues, where they've got delayed absorption, and they know, look, I'm going to, 3 or 4 hours time, my glucose generally starts rising. I'm going to plan to put my boost on for 3 or 4 hours time after I eat this meal, so that the algorithm's just ready. If my glucose levels start rising because of this delayed absorption, it's going to get it there. So this is unique features on top of the algorithm's learning that you can utilize. There's a last feature that is really a USP as well, is around our personal glucose target. So this is a target you ask the algorithm to aim for. And you can program it across the 24 hours of the day. Some people have 2 or 3 different targets across the day and night, depending on their sort of lifestyle that the algorithm's aiming for. But this target can be as low as 80 milligrams per deciliter and as high as 200 milligrams per deciliter, and anywhere between that. You think, oh, that's 200 is really high and 80 is really low. But why we
And what is that in millimoles for our European or everyone outside the US?
Yeah. 4.4 to 11 millimoles per liter.
Okay.
So it's a really nice wide range. Now, we obviously wouldn't want everyone to be sitting at 11 or 2 millimoles or 200 milligrams per deciliter. But often if somebody's starting the system, maybe some anxious about hypos, maybe been running their glucose levels for various reasons high, you just want to bring down slowly. You want to get used to the system. And so being able to start high and slowly bring it down just helps you feel more comfortable, develop trust in the system. The lower levels are why we are CE marked and FDA approved for pregnancy. We need very tight management in pregnancy for the best outcome for mom and baby. And so all the other systems at this point in time do not have a target below 5 millimoles per liter, which is around the 90 milligrams per deciliter. And unfortunately, we need this low target in your second and third trimester. And so without it, you don't get the optimal outcomes. And so that's why for example, in the UK, the NHS has said all women who are planning pregnancy or pregnant should be using a hybrid closed loop system with evidence and a target below the 5 mark, just for the best outcomes for mom and babe. So those are the boost, ease off, and the personal glucose target are the kind of above the algorithm, the app features that are sort of unique to CamAPS FX.
Yeah. So can you tell us or explain to us how the algorithm works when it comes to adapting or learning the user?
Great question. So I think the first thing we need to think about is what kind of algorithm it is, because there are different algorithms. So it is an adaptive predictive algorithm that is trying to drive insulin delivery to estimate in advance sort of what's going to happen in glucose levels in the next 2 to 4 hours and deliver insulin according to that. And it's going to adapt and adjust all the time. Every 8 to 12 minutes, it's making a recalculation on how much insulin to deliver. And then it gets some feedback information to say, oh, didn't do that as well as I hoped. I need to do that better. The algorithm is always a cautious algorithm. We don't want to drive hypoglycemia. So when you start the system, it'll be happier being slightly higher and then getting more and more aggressive and kind of learning, okay, I'm not quite hitting the target that you've asked me. I need to adapt and learn. And so we normally say to people, it learns constantly every day. The steepest learning curve is in the first 1 to 3 weeks of starting the system, while it's learning your habits, learning about you. People who've got good routine and do the same thing kind of Monday to Friday, it'll learn a lot quicker than maybe shift workers who are changing all the time. And then part of its learning, it's got 3 ways of learning. So it knows how much insulin you need in your day, your total daily dose. And that is adapted every day at midnight. It sort of adjusts and says, well, I know you're a child, you needed more insulin and you're growing. So it's adjusting that total daily dose. How much insulin do you need over that 24 hours? It's also learning between days, because every day is different with type 1, and what happens at night versus the day is different. So it's constantly checking in the day. Is this a day that you've had a few more hypos? Well, I should be a bit more cautious today. Then is this a day that I actually need to be stronger because you seem to be running a bit high? So it constantly, intra-hourly, it's adapting. And then the third way of learning is post-meal. So we're talking about a hybrid closed-loop system. You as a user need to count your carbs and adjust insulin according to, but it's a best guess. It's never perfect science of what am I going to eat, how quickly am I going to eat today. So the algorithm is there to sort of work with you to support your glucose levels after meals, and just help you out to ensure that on a day that you've maybe not counted the carbs, it was a difficult to count meal, it will help mop up the higher glucose levels. Or on a day that you might not have eaten that last little bit of your food and your glucose starts dropping, it's going to counteract that and try to prevent that hypos. So yeah, 3 ways of learning.
Well, yeah, and you had mentioned to me that there are 8 different submodels for its algorithm. Can
Correct.
Just briefly explain what that means, if you can, and then how it's choosing between these 8 different models?
So if I go back to that, every 8 to 12 minutes, it's making a sort of a prediction of how much insulin to deliver. And based on that prediction is it knowing how much insulin there is on board at the moment, how much carbohydrate is on board, knowing that it helps you in that post-meal phase, and what your glucose trends are. So it takes that information into its sort of calculator, and then it's got these 8 submodels. So a submodel is like its calculation of how much insulin to deliver. And inside the submodel is like, what is the correction factor? What is the active insulin time? Those settings that you put in a bolus calculator to work out how much insulin to deliver. Each of the submodels have those different factors, but they're all slightly different. And so the algorithm will crunch the numbers, look at which of these submodels does it think, based on its learning and understanding of the day and where we are in the day, which one should it try use to get the best outcome to hit that target in the next 2 to 4 hours. And so it will have a look, crunch the numbers and then go, yes, this one is, in my experience, the best one to choose. I'm going to use it to deliver the insulin over the next 8 to 12 minutes, and then have the feedback about, was that the right one, or should I pick a different one? So people often ask us, so what is the correction factor the algorithm is using? And we say, well, it could be different. Every 8 to 12 minutes, it could pick a different one. So we can't tell you which is the one because people say, well, I want to know what I should be using, because it changes all the time. And even more mind-blowingly, there's those 8 submodels. If there's not quite one that's right, it can combine them to make something a little different. So it's constantly calculating. This is Roman, and he's professor of mathematics. He is somebody who I've never met before, who knows as much about type 1 diabetes, but also has this amazing mathematical ability to just integrate these two sort of conditions to be able to come up with something that is the most advanced algorithm we've got available on the market at the moment.
Yeah, Roman sounds amazing. I hope that I can get him on the show at some point to tell us his story right from him. I know he's very busy with development of iOS, which
very humble. He would hate to be on here talking about it. He'd love to talk about it, but not about him.
Yeah, I love that. That's so sweet. Real quick, does this algorithm run on the phone, or does it run on the pump that's providing insulin?
Correct. It runs on the phone. It's not housed on the pump, because then that locks you to that pump.
Yeah.
So the algorithm is encased in an app that you download. At the moment, it's an Android only app, but we are developing the iOS version. So you would download the app onto your compatible smartphone. Same compatibility as for example, the sensors do, because of the Bluetooth connection. So then the phone Bluetooth talks to the sensor and the pump.
Yeah. And there's a companion app, right, for caregivers and parents. What does that look like?
Absolutely. The best way to describe it is a mirror app. So you download the same app as a parent, for example, onto your phone. You then, when you start up the app, you can choose, do I want to pair with a pump? Do I want to pair with a virtual pump, so play around with it in a demo mode, or do I want to pair as a companion? And if you pair as a companion, you then will connect with your child, and whatever your child sees on their phone, you will see on your phone. You can't, for safety reasons, bolus from your phone or influence the insulin delivery of your child. You need to do that on your child's phone, but you can have the same insulin delivery, the same sensor, and even sort of quite usefully, you can have different alarm settings. So if you want to turn off your child's alerts during the night because you don't want them woken, but you have them on your phone, or vice versa, you could set them slightly higher or do something different. So you can really be able to support and understand what's happening with your child or your loved one who's away from you, to be able to give them the right support at the right time.
Which pumps and CGMs does this currently work with?
Good question. So at the moment in England, we have 2 pumps, the Dana I, or it's also compatible with the RS, but they don't make that pump anymore, and then the MyLife IPSA pump. We are commercially available with the IPSA pump throughout Europe as well, and in Australia. From a pump point of view, the CGM is Dexcom G6. We'll soon have G7 and Freestyle Libre 3, and other sensors that are potentially on the market will be coming soon. We're always looking for other options, and the new systems like Freestyle Libre 3 Plus is coming out soon, so that will be integrated as well.
That's fantastic. So when it comes to the plans for rollout, I know you're going to a lot of places. Let's kind of just focus on the US for a second, and perhaps this is going to be replicated. There's the IPSO pump that you work with. Is that the pump that's planned to come to the US to bring this algorithm?
At this point, yes, that is the pump. It's not yet FDA approved, but they are in the process of getting their FDA approval. But our sort of regulatory approval, so if we look at FDA or CE marking or other regulatory authorities, we are sort of approved as the algorithm. And so long as we work with sensors and pumps that meet very stringent criteria to be able to provide the data in a safe, reliable way from the CGM and deliver the insulin in a high quality safe mechanism, the system can work with any sort of partner. So we have a very good relationship with our current partners and are looking forward to coming to the US with the MyLife IPSA pump system, but we are also often sort of looking at others, keeping on ensuring that each of the pump companies are developing new pumps so that we can work with them to be able to offer this as an option to people.
Yeah, I mean, similar to Tidepool Loop, which took an open source app, your algorithm shows another example for this vision of choose your algorithm, choose your pump, choose your CGM.
Correct.
And that's, all about customer choice. And hopefully other systems out there, other pumps out there, decide to allow their users to choose between their algorithm. Do they want to use Tidepool Loop? Do they want to use CamAPS FX? Do they want to use the solution that's already, placed on the pump? I'm sure there's a lot more. It's not that simple.
No, unfortunately not, otherwise we'd all be doing it. But I think that is the aspiration, to ensure that people get choice, but a safe choice that is compatible, that is regulated, that we ensure that people are one and all safe as a starting point, and then get as much choice and freedom that they can. But yes, if it was easy, we'd be all doing it. But we are working really hard to make sure that there's as much choice as possible.
Yeah, and it's nice to see one of the newer pumps in the US, the Twist, coming from Sequel MedTech. They've taken on the Tidepool Loop algorithm. And because they took an algorithm that was FDA cleared, things could move faster. So perhaps Twist could be a good option to grab CamAPS FX as another alternative for users, and hopefully other pumps follow along. Currently, this algorithm only works on Android phones, but of course here in the US, we have many iOS users, in fact, more than Android users.
Absolutely.
So, and I know that you're working on iOS. I can imagine that you want that to have already come out for the US.
Correct.
Kind of tell us, where is it in development right now?
So absolutely, and just like in the US, across the world, there are lots more iOS users than Android users. So you can imagine it's our top asked question: when is the iOS app coming in? And certainly, when I started working for CamDiab, I was thinking, where is the iOS? Is it not just cut and paste? Where is this app? And then the more I've worked with it, it was this, the understanding first, this is an insulin delivering device. This is not playing Candy Crush, or no disrespect to that app, but this is a life-saving medical device that is in the regulatory approval category as a defibrillator machine. So the thing that the ambulance will try save people's lives by giving them a shock. So it has to be really well tested. It has to be protected from with a huge amount of cybersecurity, penetration testing, and everything that goes around it to make sure that it is safe for people to use. And so we have had to create although the functionality of the app is the same and the algorithm is the same, we've had to build it from scratch. And there are some unique things in the iOS app. For example, all iOS apps automatically close when your phone goes to sleep. And if CamAPS closed, you would get no closed loop because it cannot control if it's been forced to close. And so we've had to get special permission from Apple to design the app in the way we know we need to design it to be able to communicate and support people 24/7. And so this takes time. So where we are at the moment, we are just about to embark on our regulatory approval for the iOS app, and we will hope to commercialize it in the near future. We do not know how long regulatory approval takes. The bodies do due diligence and completely thoroughly investigated, but we are often not told it will be done by this date. So it could take 3 months, it could take 6, it could take 9, who knows how long it's going to take. So at the moment, we are not saying any dates because we don't want to overpromise and underdeliver, but it is on the way. And what I can say is it will be here before we come to the US.
Yeah, you should talk to Omnipod about what their process has been, because it's taken very long to switch from Android to get the iOS app. So maybe you can learn some lessons, or maybe the FDA has some lessons that were learned in that process to make it faster.
So it's a long, hard process, but I think if it was done quickly, I think there might be mistakes along the way. So yeah, I think it's worth the wait. There are lots of people who are iOS users who carry a second phone, a sort of an older or an iOS for their personal use, and then a sort of a medical phone, Android. But we know that's not ideal. So we have a fabulous iOS team developing our app. That is one of the other reasons why it's been a little bit slower, because they're based in the Ukraine, and we obviously are experiencing the war and the problem in the Ukraine, and so we've continue to support those developers while they've been struggling in that really harsh conditions. But they are a great team, and we're fully supported on the iOS development. But actually, we were wanting some support. If there are anybody out there who's an Android app developer, we are looking to expand our team and are looking for more Android app developers to help us maintain and keep driving that app forward, as well as supporting our cloud management. So any of you techie guys and girls out there, please do let us know if you are any interest in working in the world of sort of type 1 and closed loop. It's very exciting and fast moving. So we'd welcome to hear from you.
That's great. So last time we spoke, you mentioned that you're already looking into fully closed loop algorithm. Where is that in its research?
Absolutely. So we've actually published our first fully closed loop research. We're currently running, that was in adults. We're currently running an adolescent fully closed loop using our algorithm. The one drawback at the moment is the speed of insulin. In the working pancreas, you have insulin, but you've got a cascade of other hormones getting your body ready for food. And so the insulin made in the body has is much more responsive at the right time. And so the problem of solving glucose levels now without causing a hypo later, if there's too much that sort of stays on board, can cause a problem. So we sort of used our current algorithm, the FX version. The F actually stands for Florence, which was the first name of our algorithm. And it was called Florence, interestingly enough, because one of our early research families said to us it was like having a nurse next to their child at night. It was like having Florence Nightingale, the famous nurse. And so that's why the algorithm was called F Florence, and actually there are a wealth of little babies that have been born in our research, but not Florence. But I digress. Sorry. So we sort of working at looking at fully closed loop, but we are also trying to work with partners like we work with CGM, and pumps work with our insulin making sort of partners to see whether there are any newer insulins out on the market or still in research that we could work to see if we can drive the algorithm to be fully closed loop, to be responsive enough to be able to get that really good time in range that we're looking for. So that's exciting. We already have a fully closed loop algorithm, but for the type 2 population. Type 1 and type 2 is very different and are very different mechanisms, but we do have a CE marked algorithm that is fully closed loop for type 2, and we at the moment use it mainly in the hospital setting for high glucose levels in hospital. But it is something that we will be thinking about. How can we bring that to the market to support other people living with other types of diabetes?
Fantastic. Candace, thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm so excited to see where CamAPS goes and watch it spread around and just hear what everyone thinks about it. Thanks for coming on.
No, thank you very much. And I cannot wait to sort of come with the algorithm to the US and talk to lots of people who are living with type 1 or working with people with type 1 and see how we can implement CamAPS in that environment. So very excited. Next year is going to be a big one.
Are you using CamAPS FX? Let us know in the comments on YouTube how that experience has been going. And if you aren't, would you consider using this one? Let us know. As more news drops about it, I will be making announcements. So be sure to follow me on social media and on YouTube. Links to all of my pages are in the show notes. In fact, I do have a demo video of the CamAPS FX app on Instagram and TikTok already. So links to that will be in the show notes. I'm Justin, and I'll see you next week.